I was coming up to a year and a half after my separation from my husband that I'd been married to for 22 years, and I'd finalised the divorce, and I thought that I had things going in the right direction, but I just felt miserable all the time, and I cried pretty much all of last year. Changed jobs, I changed houses, I changed everything, and I was still just not getting back on top of my mindset. I was still bitter and angry at my ex-husband for things that happened and the way the marriage ended. I wouldn't go back to my hometown because I was ashamed to be seen because my marriage failed, and I didn't want anybody to know about it, or I didn't want to feel pity from anybody else. So I had cloistered myself in my new house in the new next town up, and just thrown myself into work. And my children, I just needed something more. I needed to know that I could fix the things that were going wrong. Fortunately, I kind of spent a lot of time in those 22 years where my husband was away with the army, and so I'd learned to be on my own, and I kind of enjoyed being by myself, but they were 6-month stints. And when you start stretching it out longer and longer, and the reality is that there is no man who's going to come home and save you from whatever dilemma is going on, and you have to do it all yourself. I'm quite capable of it, but it's just exhausting. I knew other women, and I absolutely know other women in the community who are going through the same thing, and I did reach out to one very early on who was quite helpful and redirected me to things like Grace and Frankie, or Frankie and Grace, whichever one it is, just to get your mind to a place where you can laugh at what's gone wrong. But I was never comfortable talking with more than one or two of them. I also didn't ever believe that I had the right answers, or I knew the right thing to give them the advice on how to go forward. You still do that whole bitter and twisted all men are bastards, basically, because he did do some pretty horrible things, and it's really easy to be angry and make him the guilty party and I'm the innocent victim. And while you're in that victim mindset, things just don't get better. Yeah, it was all messed up. My self-esteem was in the floor. Like, it was just shocking. And I remember my 50th birthday. I share the same birthday as my dad, and it was his 80th. And so I couldn't avoid going to the big family function where they sat and celebrated our birthday. And I was doing well until one of my idiot cousins decided to make a joke about, oh, when's Steve turning up? And I just lost it and said, no, it's too soon. I can't deal with that. And I sat there and cried for the rest of the party with that, who's gonna want to marry me? Who's going to want me now? I'm 50 and I'm old and I'm frumpy and I've got nothing to offer to anybody. It was not a happy place. I wasn't able to talk respectfully about the kid's father, and they need to have a relationship with him. And in fact, now I'm on the other side. He hasn't been a bad dad. He just did some things that hurt them as well as me, but that doesn't mean their relationship should end, and I shouldn't be punishing him or them for what's going on. I wasn't being the best parent either, because I wasn't always there. Because we'd gone through couples counselling, I started going back to the lady who had counselled both of us, and I think that was only in the first 2 or 3 months. And then she said, well, I think you're fine now, you can go off, and pretty much sent me out in the world. I had been looking for things online and searching through stuff on Facebook and reading all of the little bits and pieces that flick up. I guess I had made significant progress in that I distanced myself from it. I wasn't in that state of trauma anymore, and I knew all about trauma. I knew what the response was, and I knew I'd moved beyond that, so it wasn't quite so raw, but it still wasn't healed. To start with, it was that realization that the pattern started long before I was even married, and knowing that when you go back and you look at what's happened right from the start, you can actually deal with those things that you've been bothered by. And I have wonderful family, beautiful parents, but my brother traumatized me. Dad was a perfectionist, so nothing was ever good enough. And Mum was just the most giving and loving person and possibly spoilt me rotten. So, these all had effect. That's not their fault, but I needed to own it and acknowledge it and accept that's what I've been doing, and recognize that some of this stuff needs to change. I needed to do more and I needed to get further into it. Writing it all down is great. It gets it off your chest and you actually own it and you're dealing with it and you can see it. But changing the way you think and feel about it needs those extra levels of work, because I've, been anxious and suffered depression and had all of these things over my entire life. When things have gone wrong, I just haven't known how to deal with it. And it's always been that little mind ticking away with the negative self-talk and the things that you punished yourself with that might have started with one small thing in childhood, but you just keep repeating it over and over again until it becomes you punishing yourself. I didn't know, because no one teaches you this stuff. Like, it just doesn't come out. And like, I'm a big Dr. Phil fan. I've watched his show for years. And so I could rip out all of these lines of, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? But when I was in a fight, my God, I wanted to be right. And I would fight to the death to make sure that my opinion was the right one. And you will do as I say and bend to my will. And it was so counterproductive. Look, I found out that I am worth a hell of a lot more than I ever gave myself credit for. I don't need outside approval. I was that people pleaser that wanted to be pleasing everybody all the time and making myself miserable in the process. So I'm determined now I'm going to stop doing that and I'm start working on making me happy. And everyone else is going to come along for the ride. So I don't know, I don't need to be worshipped from afar by somebody else, but I would like that now. I was adamant that no, I'm never marrying again. I don't want another partner. I'm on my own for life. And now I'm like, well, if one comes along that I like and he's good, I'll keep him. If not, he can go and I'll go back to being on my own again. I'm fine both ways. It's interesting, and this bothers me a little bit into the future, but that's how it was when I met my husband at the time. I was full of self-confidence. And I think had I remained that self-confident person all the way through, it would have been a different story. But life has a way of changing things, and children, and I didn't work for a few years. So then you completely lose your sense of self again. And none of that is his fault. That's just what happened and how it all played out. And so now that I recognize it, I can fix those patterns and move forward rather than just falling backwards into the trap. It's really set me free. I don't feel like I'm being held back by anything. I'm not angry at myself because I didn't know any better, but I am aware now, and I know that I made choices that led to this path, and I'm really happy with where I am, and I think that this is where I'm meant to be. I'm genuinely joyful for every day that I wake up now. So regardless of what happens, it's like, this is the way it is, and I'll make the most out of every situation. It feels to me like I'm back to being that person I was when I was a little girl, and I had everything going for me and I knew what it was. I've had my moments over my life where I've been able to shine. I could always turn the magnet on for children, and now I feel like I can do the same thing with adults and everybody else, and in my real life, keep moving forward and make the best. So very positive. I see lots and lots of different paths. I do see that I changed my job. I'm now doing something that I love again. I'm back in the classroom and working with children that they're not the easiest kids to work with, but I just love knowing that I can make a difference with each of them. I've got both of my children at home. One had moved out, but she's just moved back in again. And I have a boyfriend that I'm still testing the waters with, but it's a really positive step for me because I can call him my boyfriend. I've established that it's about 2 days before I need my on my own time again, but that's positive because he's been trying for a very long time to get me to go out for longer than a dinner. So it's steps in the future.